Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Harrisburg City's Council public hearing. Today is Tuesday, October the 6th, 2020, and I'm now calling this meeting to order at 5:35 p.m. Mr. Petroski, please do the roll call.
Mr. Allett.
Present.
Ms. Bowers.
Present.
Ms. Daniels.
Present.
Ms. Green.
Present.
Mr. Madsen.
Here.
Mr. Majors.
Here.
Ms. Williams.
Here. Thank you, Mr. Petroski. For everyone, this is a public hearing this evening. I ask everyone's cooperation and respect everyone as they speak. Please speak clearly and loud enough so that the court stenographer can hear every word that you have to say regarding this hearing. We will now start with Public Works Committee, and I now will turn the chair over to Mr. Majors. We can't hear you, Mr. Majors.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Very, very, very low.
All right. Is that any better? Testing, testing. I've been trying to work on this microphone all day. Test.
It's important, Mr. Majors, that you identify the participants who are engaging in Bill 10 of 2020. Allow them to speak clearly and enunciate their names or spell their name for the court stenographer, please.
Yes. So can we have the clerk read Bill 10 into the record? I'm going to switch devices to see if that works better for the audio.
Okay, thank you.
For Bill 10 of 2020, it's an ordinance vacating and striking from the official map of the city of Harrisburg various unnamed paper streets within the block bounded by Radnor Street, Jefferson Street, Columbia Street, and North 6th Street and Agate Street, between Columbia Street and Radnor Street pursuant to Chapter 3-109 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Harrisburg.
All right, and we'll turn it over to, I guess, is it Jeff Knight? Are you going to start the presentation?
Sure.
Actually, Councilman Majors and Director Knight, if I may, before we begin, I'd like to get the exhibit on the record. This is what I've identified as Exhibit 1. It is a true and correct copy of Bill 10 of 2020. In addition to Bill 10 of 2020, it contains within Exhibit 1, Exhibit A, which is the petition to vacate the street that has been signed by Edgar H. Thompson, the president of Teamsters Local Union number 776. Additionally, it contains the information sheet for the street vacation. Along with that, it contains the review by Capital Region Water, noting that they need an easement with the applicant for utilities under Agate Street. Within there is also the review submitted by the Dauphin County Planning Commission, concurring with the proposed street vacation. Within the packet, it also contains the Planning Bureau case report. And finally, the resolution of the Harrisburg Planning Commission.
Okay.
And actually, Mr. Knight, before you begin, if the stenographer would swear you in. Sorry.
You swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, so sorry, am I good to go now?
Yes, I think you're good to go now.
All right. Thank you, Councilman Majors. The application before council in Bill 10, 2020 involves the vacation of Agate Street, running north from Columbia into the center of the block, as well as various unnamed paper streets, which are actually small rights of way between, I think, 3 feet wide and 4 feet wide. They're commonly referred to as grocers' alleys that run through and along the applicant's site. The vacation request is to vacate all of these rights of ways and eventually the applicants will be consolidating the various parcels that are separated by these rights of ways, as well as the property that comes out of the vacation into a single site, in which I believe they'll be proposing a future development or possibly a future redevelopment of their headquarters on site. So the Planning Bureau and the Planning Commission both recommended approval of the request with a couple of conditions. That prior to review by the City Council, the applicant will coordinate with the city regarding the exact paper streets to be vacated within the footprint of the applicant's site. And this was largely due to some concerns from the public that were voiced at the Planning Commission meeting about maintaining access to the rear of their properties along North 6th Street and along Radnor Street. And the applicants did confirm that they intended on leaving those open so that property owners could access the rear of their properties. And then on the site map that accompanies the packet, the right-of-way boundary, the right-of-way along boundary L10 on the site plan submitted by the applicant would not be vacated and would remain 4 feet wide. And the existing right-of-way along boundary L11 would be maintained up until boundary L15. And basically, those are the two grocers' alleys that I just mentioned that would be maintained as open rights-of-way for those adjacent property owners. The Planning Bureau and the Planning Commission both recommended that the application be approved for the following reasons. The Grocers Alley rights-of-way included in the proposed street vacation currently serve no purpose and accommodate no infrastructure, and it is likely their only purpose was to provide access to the rear of buildings that once existed along the blocks, which have since been demolished. And the proposed street vacation will permit the subsequent lot consolidation of the properties on the block, thereby allowing eventual development to occur without necessitating numerous variances and special exception requests for relief from the development standards in section 7-307.3 of the zoning code. So with that, I guess I will either hand it back to you or I can turn it over to the applicants themselves to provide a bit more background on the project.
Yes, yep, we can turn it over. We'll have the applicants who are available, and then if whoever's going to present will need to be sworn by the stenographer, correct, Tiffany?
Yes, with everyone except for the attorney, and I believe Attorney Weinstock is there with the applicant.
Okay, and then if we can have the applicants that want to speak state their name for the record for the stenographers, and then be sworn in by the stenographer.
Edgar H. Thompson.
Mr. Thompson, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
No.
Thank you.
Would you like me to start?
Yes, you can proceed.
Sure. Just to give you some background, and Ed's the president of Teamsters Local 776, and been the president here since 2015. The local represents about 8,500 members in central Pennsylvania. Local has been at this location at 2552 Jefferson Street for over 60 years. We also have a hall in York, Pennsylvania that we service our members. What the Teamsters would like to do is to consolidate here and consolidate our halls from York into the Harrisburg Hall and make a nice campus here for the Teamsters. As you will see in the plot plan, which is, or the boundary survey plan, which is part of Exhibit B, Exhibit B, there are 32 lots, and the only portion is Mr. Knight indicated that we're seeking to vacate or old grocer alleys that are surrounded by Teamster property that aren't used, as well as Agate Street, which is surrounded by 10 lots on one side and 10 lots on the other side that the Teamsters do own. So all the fronts on Agate Street are owned by the Teamsters Local 776. Prior to the Teamsters purchasing this property and maintaining the property was a dumping ground. When the union took the property over, there were cars, multiple cars removed. There were over 100 tires here and over 6 tons of trash that the Teamsters spent their time and money cleaning up these properties and putting a fence around part of the area that we could. Unfortunately, the area there continues to be some dumping there, but the Teamsters are keeping on top of it on a regular basis and keeping the lots clean. So that's what the boundary survey plan shows the area. We did put fences around area D, but of course we left the area of Agate Street open, and we're seeking to vacate that street and allow all the easements that are necessary for the various utilities in the area. If there's any questions, Ed's here to answer them. I can try to answer them best of our ability. Thank you for the opportunity today to speak with you.
All right. Thank you. Is there anyone else that wants to speak on the bill before I turn it over to questions from members of council? All right, seeing none, I will start with Councilwoman Daniels. Do you have any questions for the applicant?
Not for the applicant, but for Mr. Knight. The map I have is really tiny, so could you go over again, like what the limitations are on the portions that affect the other properties?
Yes, so the limitations, I guess that's the reference to L10 and L11 in the case report.
Yes, really
sorry.
So if you could just like speak it out, because I really can't see.
Yes, so L10 and L11 are references to dimensions on their site plan that run along the western and the northern side of the overall project site, essentially. And so what the applicants were basically instructed to do by the Planning Commission was to leave those open. I believe that there was originally a proposal to essentially vacate all of those rights of way, with the land being split evenly between the applicants and any other adjacent property owners. But during the meeting, the Planning Commission meeting in November of 2019, some of the members or some of the local adjacent property owners noted that they used those paths to either bring their lawnmower in and out of the backyard, for example, to mow, or to move furniture in and out. And so the Planning Commission recommended that the applicant not vacate those rights of way, so that those property owners still had access to the rear of their properties, and so that's what was reflected in the resolution that was passed by the planning commissioners.
Okay, that's it for me. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilman Allett. Any questions?
I do not have any questions at this time. Thank you.
All right. President Williams, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Majors. Well, that was my concern, sir, is how the residents would be utilizing their backyards. So my question to you, have you contacted the neighbors in that area between 623 and 627 Radnor Street? Have you let them know what you are planning in that particular area, since the back of their yards face the adjacent of this building that you're going to renovate or construct?
There are 3 neighbors, 623, 625, and 627 Radnor Street, that hit the back of Agate Street, and we have spoken to them. And we talked about, we made sure they were aware that the grocers right of ways will continue to be available for them.
Okay. So if there is continuous dumping there, since you put the fences up, and I've seen that you constructed a fence area, how are you going to address that issue, since are you planning within the next couple of months to do the construction of your quarters?
We currently have across Agate Street, we have a gate that is currently left open.
Right.
If our plan is approved, we will close that gate, and that will eliminate the dumping back there. And over the next year and a half, we are going to be planning the new building.
Okay. So how would that construction impact the residents who, that's a one-way street coming down Radnor Street if you're doing construction in that area? Have you did a planning for that?
All construction will be done within our property. So I don't see any impact to the neighbors during construction.
Radnor Street won't be touched, anything near Radnor Street. The hall right now sits on Jefferson Street, and the hall would continue to sit in this area and will front onto Jefferson Street.
Yeah, I'm well aware of where the local 776 Teamsters building is. I just took a ride up there today, and as a matter of fact, I see where you have the fence up and you have the road crawled across the fence with the opening, the small opening, not for a vehicle, but maybe for individual. I'm just concerned that if you're going to have build onto your building or renovate your building, would you be utilizing the Radnor Street access? And you said no, everything will be coming off the 7th Street to your Jefferson Street area?
No, the building, if you're familiar with it, you know where the flag poles are?
I certainly do.
That's where the new building would go.
Yes, I was there. I went back there. I was just there about an hour and a half ago. I walked through there. Yes, I did. Because I wanted to see how that would impact the neighbors who's their backyard to your building if you closed off Aggie Street. So would they have usage of an alley? And I did see that they would. So that's why I asked you that. When you're going to start your construction of your building, would you be utilizing just Jefferson Street and the lower part of Radnor Street? Or will it impact the 6th Street area corridor? That's why I was asking you that.
No, it will not impact 6th Street at all.
Okay. Come back to me, Mr. Majors. I have a couple more questions. I just need to look over something. I do have 2 more. So come back to me, please.
Will do. Mr. Madsen, any questions?
None for me, thanks. Do you think, I'm looking forward to seeing the construction and consolidation. I think it'll be a nice complement with the activities we're seeing with the D&H building as well. So as an Uptown resident, I'm just happy to see some further investment coming into the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Green, Councilwoman Green, any questions?
I don't have any questions. I would like to say that I'm glad to see that you listened to the community that came out to the Planning Commission and the concerns that they voiced. I look forward to hearing more about the project and seeing it come to fruition. Most of my questions I was able to ask during Planning Commission, so thank you.
Thank you. And Councilwoman Bowers, do you have any questions for the applicant or Mr. Knight?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the few questions that I did have were already asked by other members of council. I will then turn it back over to President Williams to see if you have any additional questions before moving on.
Just one more. Columbia Street, are you planning to do anything with that part of Columbia Street that sits on the left side of your, or the right side of your building?
No.
Okay, okay. That's all I have, Mr. Majors, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. And seeing no further questions, and again, I just want to reiterate that we appreciate the work that you guys are doing, and that the fact that you did listen to the residents that came out regarding to ensure that those properties won't be as impacted as they potentially could have been, and that all of the construction will be done inside of that consolidated space. So if I don't see any further questions from anyone, I will ask.
Mr. Majors, one more. I'm sorry, Mr. Majors. Can I interrupt you for just 1 minute?
Absolutely, go right ahead.
Let me just ask you, how many, I understand we're 10 different lots on that area. How many did the HRA, Harrisburg Redevelopment Authority, how many did they sell from you? How many did you buy from them? I just wanted to know how many, 3 or 4?
I can double check it on my computer. They were at least, there's probably, I believe 4. Let's see, deeds. Received this deeds on December 17th, 2018.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So you bought 5 of them. Okay. And the other 5 were from homeowners, I see, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I see you bought 5 from 5 different homeowners. Okay. Thank you, sir. That's all, Mr. Majors.
Okay. Seeing none, I will conclude this portion of the hearing and ask that this be placed on the agenda for the next city council meeting. And looks like I will be turning this hearing over to Mr. Madsen.
No,
Oh, sorry,
Madsen,
President Williams.
Sorry, yes. Thank you, Mr. Majors.
My apologies.
We'll now move on to Community Economic Development Committee for our public hearing on Bill 11.
President Williams.
Yes.
I do have a public comment on Bill 10, if you'd like me to read it now before the end of the meeting.
Yes, I will. Yes. I would, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, the public comment is submitted by Sean Limerick, who is opposed to the vacating of Agate Street. He says he lives at 623 Radnor Street, which abuts the property, and says he's opposed to the vacation for a number of reasons. The paper streets were to remain in place until they were vacated. However, the fence that was erected in 2019 took 2 of 4 feet that was there. If not moved after the Planning Commission hearing that was held on November 6, 2019. 2, the Planning Commission made it a condition of approval that they come to an agreement with the owners, residents of 623 Radnor abutting properties, which they have never done. Number 3, state statute 1731B states personal notice must be provided to the owners of a property abutting the street proposed to be opened or vacated. This has not been done. Rather, there was a notice attached to 2 telephone poles that are on the stretch of Agate Street that is being considered for vacation. 4, I would like proof that they met any and all of the notice requirements required under state statute 1731. 5, not least of which this stretch of road is where we and neighbors park, as there is limited, if any, parking on Radnor Street at night or on the weekend. They attached photos, which I forwarded to all council members.
Okay.
Many people park in vacant spaces next to their home out of necessity, which is legally owned or not. The photos were taken from my front porch, and the open spaces seen when I pan right are for the driveways of the Teamsters. I therefore urge the commission to deny this proposed vacation due to the applicant's repeated refusal to follow the law, circumnavigation of proper procedure, and recommendations of the Planning Commission, submitted by Sean C. Limerick.
Okay. Mr. Majors?
Yes, no, we have those. So I guess we'll give the applicant an opportunity to speak to some of these concerns. Kirk, would you like me to send this to them as well so they can see that, or has the applicant heard this, or have they come to any resolution with the property owner at 623 Radnor Street?
We have spoken to 623 Radnor Street, spoke to Mr. Limerick as well as Mrs. Limerick. Again, we did explain to them the grocery right-of-way that is available and continues to be available. The concern they raised was being able to get items into the back of the house. Parking was never raised as an issue. And here, where I'm standing right now, looks out to Radnor Street. I can see parking spots right from where I'm standing right now. So we have talked to them about the grocery right away. Now, the other thing the teachers have done, and we've also spoken to the Limericks about this, let them know that we do also own the property at 619 Radnor Street, and that we would give them, and that's another vacant lot, and that we would give them access through the 619 Radnor Street. If they did need to get access to the rear of our property, they could utilize our property, get access to the back, and go through that, right through the back. 12 feet That's all it is. Each of these lots on Radnor Street are 12 feet from that area. So we have spoken to the homeowner.
Okay, thank you. And then to point number 3 on there, they were saying personal notice was not provided. Do you have any record of that notice via, I don't know which code they're referring to, but they're stating state statute 1731.
I believe that's all done right through the Planning Commission. There were notices posted both before the Planning Commission as well as now. And we've spoken to them about it. They're aware of it.
Councilman Majors, if I may, as well, the third class city code provides that handbills notice of the street vacation should be posted in conspicuous areas along the area to be vacated. It is not personal notice.
Okay.
And Mr. Knight, did you post the properties with respect to tonight's public hearing?
I did.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was just, I'm well aware of the, the posting, but they're trying to say that there was some sort of personal notification that needed to be made. I don't know where that lies in state statute.
Me either. And the reference to 1731B is not the section on street vacations in the third class city code. So I'm not sure exactly what they're referring to.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Sure.
And let me just make sure all of their other concerns are spoken to through here. Okay, so then, I don't know, Tiffany, not for today, but for the next meeting, could you just provide me with the 1731, what, if that's in the city code, what the exact site is to that? So if it's not street vacation, what it is, so we can, if it needs to be addressed, we can properly address it.
I sure will.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Mr. Majors, if
yes.
I may, although handbills were posted, especially on poles, it is a known factor that kids take handbills down. Anytime posting on posts and everything, kids will take that information down. We posted along the Division Street corridor, no parking, and every last sign was taken down within 5 minutes after we posted. So maybe the residents didn't have an opportunity to see those handbills. Maybe they should have given them something in the mail or put something in their mail slot.
Thank you, President Williams.
You're welcome.
So seeing none, I will ask that we move this to, if there's no further comments, I'd ask that we move this to the city council to the meeting for our next legislative session for a vote. And I guess now that will end the public hearing on Bill 10, and I will now turn it back over to President Williams. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Mr. Majors. I think, Mr. Majors, we need to look at, we need to address the resident's concern. He did have 5 concerns here. I am going to go to his home tomorrow at 623 Radnor and talk with the residents to find out exactly what it is that the individuals at 773 Teamsters did not do. At that time, I think, we can, you asked me to put it on the agenda, but I think we need to address his concerns first and see if he has any additional concerns. Obviously, he lives in that vicinity and he is a homeowner. So we should make sure that he is satisfied with the vacating of that particular street.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's why I didn't recommend a position on how we're going to take it. I would ask that we place it on the calendar.
Okay.
Now and then we can reach out to Mr. Limerick, address those concerns. And also Mr. Knight, if you and the Planning Commission have any information as to the dates when it was posted on those on the posts conspicuously per state statute, I'd appreciate that, so we could also have that as a part of our ability to work to address the concerns of the property owner at 623 Radnor.
Councilman Madsen, I can confirm that prior to the November 2019 election, the postings were put on the right-of-way was posted on October 25th, 2019. And the most recent postings that I believe Mr. Limerick referenced in his email or in his comments were posted on September 29th of this year.
Okay, so let me just make sure I have those dates. October 25, 2019.
Yep.
September
29th.
September 29. Okay.
Correct.
Okay, so they were posted on both of those dates. And for the Teamsters, if you can via email provide us with any correspondence you had or dates that you may have talked to the property owner, that'd be appreciated as well if they're not included in any of the documentation that you provided, just so when we go talk to him, we're able to try to address as many of his concerns as possible.
And President Williams, if you come to the block, we're more than happy to meet with you as well as the members and talk further about this issue. So please let us know.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay. And President Williams, I'll reach out to you to see if we can coordinate some time to speak to the Limericks and with the Teamsters.
Okay, that'll be fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Majors. We will now move on to Community Economic Development Committee, the public hearing for Bill 11 of 2020. Mr. Mattson.
Thank you, President Williams. Would the clerk be willing to read the bill into the minutes?
Sure. Bill 11 of 2020 is an ordinance amending the official zoning map of the city of Harrisburg for 2200 and 2300 Market Street, zone institutional INS, to change the zoning designation to commercial neighborhood CN.
Thank you. Is someone from the administration present to go over the bill?
Councilman Madsen, if I may, I will start and kick off with getting the exhibit into the record.
Okay,
I have in front of me what has been marked as Exhibit 2. It is a true and correct copy of Bill 11 of 2020. Contained with the resolution is the application for the zoning map amendment submitted by Mr. Gary Gillaham and Mr. Corey Dupree, both with the Bridge Echo Village. The application is signed by the property owner, and the property is actually owned by William Penn Holdings, and that signature is from a Mr. Jeremy Hunter. Along with the application is the existing zoning map for 2200 and 2300 Market Street. We have the Dauphin County Planning Commission recommendation that they agree with the zoning map amendment. Additionally, we have the Planning Bureau case reports. And finally included in the exhibit is the resolution of the Harrisburg Planning Commission.
Thank you for that. Director Knight?
Sure.
Yep.
So as noted, the request is proposing to rezone 2200 Market Street, which is the former Bishop McDevitt school, and then also the adjacent property to the east, 2300 Market Street. That was a accessory surface parking lot for that use. And both of those are currently designated as institutional, and the proposed zoning map amendment will change that to commercial neighborhood designation. This designation was chosen in discussion with the applicants, between the city and the applicants, being that their proposal is a unique mixed use project. So there are a lot of different elements of the proposed final design of the project, and the commercial neighborhood zoning district best captured the various different uses that would go in. They may still have to have requests for zoning relief based on the use if that becomes an issue down the line, if they change their proposed uses as their project evolves. But I believe that most of the uses that they had at least indicated to the Planning Bureau are covered under the commercial neighborhood zoning designation. So what this will do is it will expedite their redevelopment proposal of the site by removing necessary zoning relief requests. It will not remove the requirement for a land development plan. So which I believe that will be subsequent to getting approval of the zoning map amendment. I don't know if that's imminent or if that's a little ways possibly down the line, but they will still be filing a land development plan, which both the Planning Commission and the City Council will have an opportunity to review before moving forward. So both the Planning Bureau and the Planning Commission recommended that the request be approved for the following reasons. The current zoning designation reflected the existing and presumed future use of the property when the current zoning map was developed between 2008 and 2010. However, recent years have made it apparent that a more flexible zoning designation is necessary to encourage the adaptive reuse of this former institutional property. The proposed CN zoning would not be out of character or represent a significant departure from the zoning at other locations in the corridor. There are CN zoned properties to the east and west of the site, and larger institutional and commercial sites to the east in the form of the John Harris and Marshall Math Science Academy campuses and Klein Village, respectively. The unique location of the site, separated from adjacent neighborhoods by Reservoir Park to the northeast and west, reduces any impacts from redevelopment of the site that would be aided by the current rezoning request. As a former school building and historic architectural resource, effective redevelopment of the property has proven difficult. The building preservation and amelioration of blighting conditions that currently exist requires a more flexible and progressive zoning designation. And finally, the applicant's eventual development proposal for the property includes an ambitious and laudable approach to creating a walkable live, work, play, and I believe also eat, and one more word that the applicants can fill in for me there, community, and the current CN designation best matches the proposed vision for the site. So with that, I will hand it back to you or to the applicants to provide a bit more background on their proposal.
Yeah, we'll pass it on over to the applicant. Is the applicant present?
Present. Present.
Gentlemen, the floor is yours. Could you just state your name for the record and your title?
Are we going to get sworn in? Garrett Gilliam.
And your title?
CEO of the bridge.
Okay.
And Corey Dupree. I'm COO of the bridge.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Misters Gilliam and Dupree, can you please raise your right hands for me? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. I do.
Thank you.
Patrick, I'm sorry. My name is Benedict Dubs. I didn't jump in there. I'm also the architect for the bridge, so I'm here as well.
Okay, what was your last name again, sir?
Benedict Dubs.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, gentlemen, floor is yours.
Yes. So the bridge, what we do is acquire older properties, schools, malls, warehouses, and convert them into what we call eco-villages. As Mr. Knight said, there are many different aspects of the bridge. We've broken it down and simplified it into 5: work, eat, live, learn, and play. And we like to think that you're doing one of those 5 things at some point in your day. So the most sustainable thing to do is to do them in one place, hence the mixed use development. So that work aspect is converting the portion of the building into a co-working space, as well as a maker space to provide a space for entrepreneurs to come and have incubation, acceleration in their startups. And that eat branch, that's actually an indoor urban farm to grow food year round in a controlled environment. The live aspect is housing, anywhere from affordable housing to upper class housing. So everybody mixed in together. The learn aspect is actually the nonprofit portion of the bridge, which is programming for financial literacy, job training, teaching people how to farm, just aiding in the other aspects of the bridge, but that's the nonprofit portion. And then the play aspect is entertainment. So providing trampolines, arcades, zip line, batting cages within the city limits, so people don't have to leave. They have access to those things within the city limits. So that's kind of the bridge: work, eat, live, learn, play. done sustainably, the eco aspect actually comes through the EAT branch, but it's connected to the whole building. So looking to have PV solar panels, not just to be net zero, but looking to be net positive in our energy consumption. In terms of water, we'll have water collection to use that water on site in our farm as well as within the rain garden. So looking to capture that water and treat it the right way. In terms of carbon, as well as waste, looking to actually bring in green food waste and convert that into nutrients as well as more energy for the site. So looking to close a lot of those loops, make the entire site more sustainable, almost do a model for what buildings should be looking like into the future, especially in Harrisburg.
Thank you for that. Did anybody have anything else to add?
No, sir.
I'm fine.
Okay. I'm extremely familiar with this project. I've gone to a number of community events where the applicant went over it in detail. So I don't have a lot of questions. I will let it open up to my colleagues who may not be as familiar with the bridge's work. So I will start, if we were on the dais, to my far, what would it be? Left. With no, excuse me, my right, with Councilwoman Bowers.
Thank you. I don't have any questions. I love this concept. I think it is very forward thinking, and I think it will definitely bring just new, fresh energy into the city. So I'm really excited, and congratulations, gentlemen, on this feat.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Okay, Councilperson Green.
Thank you. I don't have any questions. I've been following this project for a while. I'm really excited to see it continue to progress. I look forward to seeing it, being a part of it, and in helping in any way that I can. So thank you.
President Williams.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here this evening. I'm certainly excited to see this happen. As you know, I've been an advocate for 16 years about affordable housing. I just have a couple of questions. How many housing units will be available during this renovation? I mean, during this construction, I'm sorry.
46 units, one of which will be a manager's apartment.
Okay. And will all of those be low income?
No, there'll be a mix.
Mixed. How many for mixed? And do you know, you have an idea? Have you set down?
It'll be determined by what tax credits come in and what ratio, you know.
Sure. Okay, okay. Have you addressed the parking situation there in that area?
Yep, so 2,300 is the covered, or the, excuse me, paved parking area. So we'll use that. There's also in the front of the building on street for 100 spaces. Okay. And looking also to partner with the Civil War Museum up top to have a shared parking if need be, if there's ever an overlap. But we're looking to have our residents work, eat, live, learn, and play on site. So the use of a car to, you know, necessarily get off. And also people will be, if you have an office there, you probably also have a housing, you know, an apartment there. So the use for 2, you know, parking spots isn't necessarily needed. So that aspect of the eco village is something that limits the amount of parking that's needed. But we do have parking on site as well as in front of the building. Okay. So you did communicate with the Civil War and you're going to meet with them to try to work out a plan with that, with the parking situation? Okay, okay. Because you said you addressed that in the future application. So I was just wondering if have you been in conversation with the Civil War? Then, all right, okay. Well, I think that's all I have. And I certainly think this is a benefit to the city as well as to the community. I'm certainly in support of it. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilperson Allett.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to echo my colleagues. I think the project is innovative. I think it's exactly the type of efforts that we should see, you know, multiplying in the city. I love the concept. I love what it brings to the community. Jeff, my question is for you. You may have noted this. I was trying to read through the resolution as you were, or the bill as you were talking. Has there been any potential issues raised by neighbors or concerns that they have that have not been met or addressed at this point?
No, I haven't. The Planning Bureau is not aware of any comments submitted in opposition or just of concern regarding this project. That may be because individuals are maybe waiting to see an eventual land development plan for more specifics about the project. But in general, from the comments I've seen either on social media or that I've heard at some of the events that I've attended, largely seem positive. People are excited to not only see that building be reused, but to be maintained as well, so that it doesn't have to be demolished and something else built there. So I think they're very supportive of the vision that the applicants have shown.
And if I may, Mr. Allett, to compound on that, we did have great conversation with Mr. Beerbaum as it relates to Bellevue, and have received letters of support. The community members in that area, as well as stepping further down deeper into Allison Hill, have come out for our community days and have been great advocates. So, and any concerns, we haven't had many. I want to say the largest one was what we're going to do with certain plants. So we're working with some conservatories and trying to preserve some of those plants in the area that aren't necessarily native species to Harrisburg. So it might seem like a small concern to some, but still we want to try and keep everybody happy.
Great, thank you. And honestly, I applaud your efforts for involving the community all along the way. I think that that's the key to a successful project. So I think that's a good example for other projects people want to do in the city. People need to keep that in mind of how to engage the neighborhoods and the local community in that. So well done, thanks so much. And I look forward to the project continuing.
Thank you.
Councilperson Majors.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me? I just want to make sure my mic is okay.
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Okay. So as I guess I've been following this project, and as a person who, my mother lives directly across the street from where this proposed site is going to go, and as well as a resident of the neighborhood that abuts the property, Bellevue Park. I think a lot of, and a former attendee of Bishop McDevitt, an alumni of Bishop McDevitt. I'm glad to actually see something happening with this building. I've actually had an opportunity to help, to participate in some of the cleanup days over there, and appreciate the effort that you all are taking. In terms of, I heard Mr. Gilliam mention the use of green waste to, help either create fuel or potentially even compost, something like that. Since we're still early on in this process, where exactly on that property is that going to be? Is it going to be closer to the neighbors on the east off of 21st Street that go into that neighborhood that on the back end of Reservoir Park, or somewhere else on the property? Because one thing we've experienced in the past where we've been looking at some of these ideas is some opposition to people with compost and the potential smells and things that may generate from something like that.
Yeah, that'll be within actually the farming footprint. And I'll let our architect Benedict speak a little more specifically on the orientation of that on site, but it will be within the farming aspect.
Good evening, everyone. So that portion of the project is on the back side of the building. What would have been the portion of the football field closer to the overhead structure. So that portion of the building was built in 1962. That's the back side. So all of that function will actually happen within the courtyard of the building. So it won't happen on the front facade. It's really going to happen on the back. So, and the elevation between the base of the footprint of the football field to the grade up at the Civil War Museum is about 52 feet. So we're actually down inside that bowl, if you will, where that activity is going to happen.
Okay, no, thank you. Thank you. That helps me get some perspective on that. And then in terms of parking, I think, having the space at the 2300 Market Street, the elevated parking, I think that'll be great. One of the things as a person who grew up directly across the street from the school was during school days, there'd be a lot of traffic. So, I guess the more parking you guys have off-site, on site, but off of the main street there on Market Street, it's going to be helpful as well. I truly look forward to the developments on this project and the land development plan and other documents that will be forthcoming as you guys continue to move forward on this project. I think a lot of the neighbors in Bellevue Park, especially the neighbors on Market Street, are excited to actually see work and progress being made to that facility, and look forward to hearing from you all and working with you all in the future to improve this area of the city. No further comments or questions. Thank you, Mr. Madsen.
Thank you. Councilperson Daniels?
Just if you have a sense of timeline for when things might be happening.
Benedict, I'll let you speak on that more. You can give that synopsis way better than I can.
Okay, thank you. We anticipate demolition to begin this winter within the building itself. As Mr. Knight indicated, we need to submit a land development plan. We look to do that later this year so that we could work back and forth with everybody. We've had some really good initial discussions with Mr. Knight. We'll continue to do so with the other planners, submit that land development plan with the anticipation of that being receiving approval in the spring. That will allow us to then start to do some of the construction, some of the new construction outside the footprint of the building. So demolition this winter, new construction starting in the spring, with the total timeline taking between 12 and 16 to 18 months to wrap up construction.
And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So any other questions, concerns?
Yeah, just real quick, Councilman Madsen, and Kirk's on the line. Have we received any public comment on the zoning piece? Since this application is just for the zoning, have we received any public comment on zoning?
Mr. Petroski, any comments?
No, I do not believe so. I'm looking. No.
Okay. Well, if that changes, please let us know. Okay. I have nothing to add. I do look forward to seeing the project develop and the land development plan and working with the bridge group to cultivate that a little bit and work on, I know they're very dedicated to local MWBE participation. So once they get a little further along, how we can coordinate and make that happen. Otherwise, appreciate all the outreach they've been doing into the community, been very visible, making sure constituents have a lot of time to ask questions and even giving them the ability to participate and help and support the project. So very good, gentlemen. If there's nothing else to add, I will recommend that we move the Bill 11 for a vote at our next legislative session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Madsen. We'll now continue with our hearing and move on to the Building and Housing Committee. Chairperson, Ms. Bowers, I'm sorry. Danielle Bowers.
Thank you, President Williams.
You're
good
welcome.
evening, everyone. Mr. Petroski, can you please read Bill 12 of 2020 into the record?
Sure. Bill 12 of 2020 is an ordinance amending zoning regulations related to the establishment and operation of bed and breakfast uses, including chapters 7-305.7B, 7-305.7C, 7-309.2H, and 7333.2A, 24 of the zoning code of the city of Harrisburg.
Thank you. Ms. Baldock, would you like to add the exhibits to the record?
Yes, thank you, Councilwoman Bowers. This will be marked as Exhibit 3, and it is a true and correct copy of Bill 12 of 2020. Included with the bill is the zoning code amendment application, which was submitted by Michael Wilson and Sally Jo String Wilson. They own the manor on Front Street. They provide a narrative about the need for the text amendment to the zoning ordinance. Along with that is the recommendation from the Dauphin County Planning Commission, which does not see any issue with the proposed amendment. Additionally, there is the Planning Bureau case reports. And finally, we have the resolution of the Planning Commission. I also just want to make clear that this is purely for bed and breakfast uses, and it has nothing to do with Airbnb.
Thank you for clarifying that. Mr. Knight, will you be speaking on behalf of the administration?
Sure. Thank you, Councilwoman Bowers. As Mr. Petroski read into the record, this zoning code amendment does just address bed and breakfast uses, but because the zoning code considers uses from a variety of perspectives, whether it's definitions or specific criteria regulating how they're used, as well as the zoning districts in which they're permitted, this particular request kind of covers a couple sections of the zoning code. The applicants were pretty thorough in making sure that the language was addressed in all the relevant sections of the zoning code so that we won't get down the line and kind of wonder how to, apply an existing regulation to what they're proposing to do. And I'm sure the applicants can speak a little bit more about this, but I think one of the reasons they were proposing this is that they realized that eventually down the line they may want to sell their business and hand it off to a new owner, but they didn't want to necessarily sell it to a hotelier or one of the existing companies. They wanted to make sure it was able to go with somebody who had experience in the bed and breakfast industry. And what they had found in putting out some feelers, I guess, was that there are individuals who, for lack of a better word, I guess, collect bed and breakfast throughout the country. And they might own uses such as these in various locations and sometimes use them to travel the country as well. But what that means is that if they do want to own it and operate it as a bed and breakfast, they will have an on-site manager, whereas our current zoning code basically requires it to be owner occupied. And so they want to make sure that after they own these properties, that it can still go to somebody with a focus on bed and breakfast, and again, not something more corporate related. And so they want to make sure, and so that's what these zoning code regulations are designed to do, is to make it so that somebody could buy it and still operate it as a bed and breakfast, but not necessarily live there. With that being said, the Planning Bureau and the Planning Commission both recommended that City Council approve the request for the following reasons. Proposed changes, if enacted, would not be contrary to previous reviews and actions of the Planning Bureau, the Planning Commission, or the Zoning Hearing Board, which has granted zoning relief from the regulations in the only instance in which it was requested under the current zoning code. So this will not be something that is contrary to actions that have previously been taken with regard to these types of uses. The proposal will allow bed and breakfast uses in the district in which it is currently permitted, the commercial neighborhood, and in the district which accommodates the only two operating uses in the city, and that's the Riverfront District, as well as the other two commercially oriented districts, Commercial General and Downtown Center, which are logical extensions of this amendment given their similar or more intensive development. And basically what that's saying is that this is going to change the permissibility of this particular use in the RF district, where we see our only two bed and breakfasts in the city, as well as the more intensive, commercially more intensive districts, the Commercial General and Downtown Center. So this will not be, for example, going into the residential medium density district and permitting such uses by right in those properties. And then finally, the proposed amendments will place such uses in Harrisburg on the same regulatory footing as a nearby municipality in which such uses are more prevalent, that being the city of Lancaster, and a municipality that sees a substantial seasonal visitation volume, that being State College, PA. Thus, it is reasonable to assume that those regulatory ordinances have withstood years of real-world application and scrutiny and are thus better attuned to the conditions and realities of this particular industry. So basically, they didn't just pull these out of thin air. They researched other municipalities in the state here to find language that would kind of put, uses, bed and breakfast uses in the city of Harrisburg on the same footing as other cities in the state, and that, you know, have had their ordinances exercised and reviewed, so they've withstood that regulatory scrutiny. And so with that, I will hand it back to you, and allow the applicants to provide a little bit more information.
Thank you. Are Mr. Wilson or Miss String Wilson available?
Mike Wilson's available. Yeah.
Okay.
And my name, excuse me. My name is Ronald Lucas, attorney with Stevens and Lee in Harrisburg. I have to apologize, counsel. I didn't realize that I told my IT staff to change my partner's name, Charles Sir. He was the last one to use the system, and I didn't get my name on there, so I apologize for that. But I might start off, and then Mr. Wilson explained. As you know, they purchased the buildings that were going to be demolished on North Front Street. They've operated a manor on Front Street for several years now. We obtained approval from the zoning hearing board to increase the number of rooms to 6 to 14 in January, and in the process be able to use both buildings for that. This request is so that there can be a live-in manager rather than a live-in resident there. And in doing so, the ability for somebody to own more than one and have a manager there in residence. We requested in this amendment to make the use a permitted use in the Riverfront District, and also in the commercial neighborhood and commercial limited districts. And the use by the accessory use also continue in those districts. Those are the only by right uses. It's not changing anything else in the residential from what it is today. That is our amendment. We would note that we would request that the language in the ordinance, I think, speaking with the assistant solicitor and Mr. Knight, Ms. Baldock and Mr. Knight, that the provision in there that the definition of bed and breakfast be rented on a nightly basis for no more than 14 days at a time, as opposed to 14 days in a month, because they've had a situation where somebody's in for a week, leaves, and then comes back for a week. Business people, especially, that want to have business in the city. Also, the Wilsons have come to realize that by having 14 rooms, they are would like to have 2 non-resident employees rather than 1 non-resident, because to cleaning the rooms and doing breakfast, that is quite a task. So we're asked that the ordinance be advertised for the adoption and contain that change about the 2 non-resident employees. There was confusion on our part, I apologize, on when it was submitted and discussed with staff. So we provided that ordinance to staff last week. With that, Mr. Wilson's here. He can answer any questions or confirm what I just indicated or add anything to that.
One moment before you begin. We just got started so quickly. We failed to swear both of you gentlemen in. So Patrick, can we please rewind and swear them in together?
And actually, Councilwoman Bowers, there's no need for Attorney Lucas to be sworn in, as he's not providing testimony. But yes, Mr. Wilson will need to be sworn in.
Thank you.
Mr. Wilson, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You may proceed, Mr. Wilson.
Okay, so yes, the whole reason for this is we saved both mansions, and we felt that we needed this change, that the B&B can continue even when we're gone in whatever manner. That way, you know, it can continue, and that's our wish after all the work and construction we did and so on, and building a business in the last 5 years.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
I will now open up the floor for questions from my colleagues. I'll begin with Councilwoman Daniels. Do you have any questions?
And this is for our council. Could you explain how the applicant is able to make a request to amend districts they're not in?
Well, they had requested, you know, a change to the definition of bed and breakfast. Okay. And then with discussions, you know, further discussions, and especially, you know, with the planning director, it was felt that it would be appropriate to also expand this into other districts.
Okay, so then this is partially their application, partially a city interest.
Yeah, and maybe Mr. Knight, if you want to speak to that, how we sort of, you know, expanded the definition and where bed and breakfast is.
Yeah, so when the applicants initially came to us, you know, they were looking kind of more at their particular property and how it might apply, and how a change in the zoning code might apply to their property. But as we looked into that and looked into how the bed and breakfast use was addressed in the zoning code, we realized that if we're going to be taking a look at this for really the first time since the zoning code was passed, it made sense to take a fuller look at the use and how the zoning code addressed it. And you know, we noted that the zoning code, I believe, required a special exception for the riverfront district for the proposed use, but also that our only two uses were in the riverfront district, and that it was reasonable that this was because, you know, you have nice riverfront views and we have all these great old properties along the riverfront. So as we're looking to, you know, I guess liberalize the zoning code's approach to bed and breakfast, let's look at it a little bit larger, and how can we maybe encourage more of these types of uses throughout the city. And that's why we did things like include the downtown center and the CG district in the zoning code amendment as well, because you know, those two districts are much more intensively developed and used than the RF districts. So we thought if somebody wants to do it there, they should be. You're not introducing a more intensive than what the neighborhood might otherwise be able to accommodate, such as if you were putting it into an RM district, you'd be putting it in like downtown, or, you know, in one of our fewer CG zone districts in the city. So that's really kind of how the current zoning code amendment application grew a little bit beyond what the applicants had originally brought into us. But most of what is covered in this is from the applicants and was based on their research.
So I guess I understand partially some of this is probably you not wanting to duplicate work, but is there a reason, given how soon the comprehensive plan is coming out, that we couldn't wait to amend the other definitions, the other zones?
I mean, you know, we certainly can do that. What the zoning code that looks like on the other side of the comprehensive plan is, I think, you know, still up in the air. We can certainly develop that from the beginning to reflect some of what's being recommended in this zoning code. But, you know, frankly, I don't know even that we would get many proposals for a bed and breakfast in the CG district, just because that tends to be things like portions of Paxton Street or South 29th Street, where you have a lot of larger properties with big buildings set back behind parking lots. So I don't even know that that there'd be too many proposals for that, but I can see possibly something like a bed and breakfast being proposed for a downtown center district. And so or just kind of trying to look at if somebody wants to do that in the downtown center, and it's a relatively innocuous use. It's, you know, a less intensive hotel, if you will. How can we encourage something like that to be established there? And so that's why we included those two other districts. But, you know, I think ultimately it's up to council to decide whether they want to embrace that fuller approach to this proposal.
And do you have a sense as of right now how many, I mean, I know it's hard because you would have to guesstimate rooms and all of the room numbers, but how many properties in the commercial neighborhood, commercial general, and downtown center are currently for residential use that could be converted to bed and breakfast? I know they wouldn't all go, but how many units are impacted by the redefinition, especially residential units?
Right. So the proposed use is already permitted by right in the CN district, so that wouldn't change. It would be, I think, more of the downtown center and residential medium density, or sorry, in the riverfront district. I think you'd probably see it more in the riverfront, and riverfront is definitely more of a mixed bag between residential uses and commercial uses, and some institutional uses as well. So I don't know that there would be too much impact on that. And you know, kind of to what you said, I think it's very difficult to determine like how many extra or additional bed and breakfast uses this might incentivize in the city, especially with the you know, advent of short-term rentals like Airbnb and turnkey, things like that. You know, I get the sense that that's more where the general industry is going, but this regulation would not impact that. So I don't think this will result in too many. We'd certainly be, you know, certainly like to see some, and, you know, would certainly work with anybody who wanted to put one of these in, but I don't know that this would drive a large number of bed and breakfasts to come into some of these districts in which we're talking about permitting it.
But I would just like a number of like how many current residential units would be affected by the change in the definition.
I could probably do it property-wise a little bit easier. I would say, yeah, I would say maybe 1,000, maybe 1,200, somewhere in that range. Now, again, that includes everything in those, every property in those zoning districts, such as City Hall here, for example, or, you know, anywhere downtown like the Hilton or something. So not all of those are certainly residential. In fact, probably a small portion of them are. So maybe 20 to 25% of that number. So maybe you're looking at like 250 to 300.
And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Green, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions regarding this. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Councilman Madsen.
No questions for me, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Vice President Allett.
No questions, but it's interesting that we're having this resolution. I have friends who own a bed and breakfast outside of Rehoboth, and they're out, I guess the township or the county was having a very similar type of discussion. And a lot of the bed and breakfasts were being hurt by how it was existing. So I think this actually is a really good idea. And again, it helps breathe in options for people to stay in the city that's not a hotel. So I think it's actually I think it's a positive thing. So thank you very much. That's all I have.
President Williams.
Thank you, Ms. Bowers. Thank you. I'm interested in, you're going from, Mr. Wilson, going from 6 to 14 and asking for approval in the increase of units for your bed and breakfast. Could you tell me why the reason that you want to do that?
President Williams, the zoning change, the zoning relief that they requested to go from 6 to 14 was previously approved.
Okay, 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 thank you. I didn't know that because you said it had.
Yes, they had gone for that, I believe last year, and they received that relief. This is more allowing it to be manager occupied as opposed to owner occupied, and having a two non-resident employees.
Okay, so why did we not separate this zoning bill, Mr. Knight? Because I can see if the parties are not interested in obtaining other property, why are we now doing combining the manager occupied building with the allowance of utilizing neighbor, CN and CG and DC area?
As I mentioned, this is the first time we don't really have a lot of certainly about bed and breakfast here in the city, and so I think we hadn't given a lot of in-depth consideration to what our regulations look like. How does that look with respect to other municipalities? How does that look like with respect to what the industry looks like? And so in our discussions with the applicants, we kind of learned a bit more of this industry. And so we kind of looked at it as, all right, this sounds like, these are good properties, or these are good businesses for reusing a lot of these old historic mansions that we have. And we have a lot of these further down the riverfront in DC zoned districts too, not just riverfront zone districts. So we wanted to kind of, I guess, be a little bit more open to the prospect of some of these coming in. And since we had an application for amending our bed and breakfast uses being presented by the applicants, we thought we'd, and because their zoning code amendments did touch on a number of different aspects of the zoning code, and it wasn't just like crossing out a line or something in one location, we decided to kind of look at it a bit more holistically as well.
I think we should separate the two because we're looking at, putting those together. He is asking for the zoning code here for the manager operated occupied building instead of the owner occupied building. And he's also not interested at this time in obtaining other properties to extend through the city. So why is it that you did not bring this down to council to talk about working on the zoning code, and inclusive of that, working on whether or not that we want to extend this into the commercial neighborhood, commercial general, and downtown center? I think this is a combination of everything in this bill, and it shouldn't be.
It already exists. It's already permitted by right in the commercial neighborhood.
I know. I understand that. I understand that.
Nothing will change there.
Right.
Well, I mean, ultimately, as I said, if council feels that the inclusion in the other two zoning districts is, kind of beyond the scope of what they want to consider and not related to the applicant's request, we'll certainly understand if those aspects are stricken from the eventual determination that city council makes. And, we'll revisit this as Councilwoman Daniels noted in a zoning code rewrite that follows the comprehensive plan. So we can certainly look into changing our current regulations when that time comes.
Are there any revenues that the city receives from this?
The applicants can probably answer that a bit better than I can.
We pay 5% county tax. So the county receives 5% and the state receives 6%.
And the city receives nothing on the bed and breakfast usage?
Real estate taxes.
Exactly, besides the real estate taxes, okay.
I think that might be a portion that goes to the hotel tax that goes to the county, gets granted back to the city.
That's what I was questioning, if it's inclusive with the hotel taxes received.
I think it might be. Can anyone confirm that?
It is a hotel tax.
Yes.
Yes.
So then we do get a portion of that back from the county.
Get a portion of that, okay.
Yes.
Okay. Are you looking to extend these bed and breakfasts throughout the city of Harrisburg. Are you interested in buying, purchasing any other properties?
Am I? Not at this point, no.
All right. In your bed and breakfast, how successful, you had mentioned, Mr. Knight, that in other cities such as Lancaster and State College, the bed and breakfast has been very successful. How successful has that been? Could you give us any statistics on that?
Perhaps the applicants can provide a bit more information on that.
Okay.
Sure. I'd be happy to. To give you an idea, just a little bit of an idea of percentages of how B&Bs work. Lancaster area, because they have a lot of B&Bs, if you're hitting 45%, you're at the top of your game. Here, we hit 60 to close to 70% occupancy. So it's doing very well. In fact, we purposely started out with 6 rooms to build everything. And we see now, obviously, because we went for 14 rooms, that we can expand that. And I can say too that we have people eat in the city. We try to keep them in the city. They ask us different things that are going on, and we're very good at giving them information. And I can tell you that most of the B&B people that stay with us come back and say, we can't believe how beautiful your city is. It's awesome. We'll be back. And also, we love your B&B. And they really enjoy the riverfront too.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Bowers. That's all I have at the time.
Thank you. Councilman Majors, do you have any questions?
Yes. So in terms of other communities, are other communities have these provision where it allows for the manager occupied use versus the owner occupied? I don't know, Mr. Knight or.
Yeah, I guess I'll let the applicants respond to that.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear him.
We couldn't hear him.
What was the question? I apologize.
Okay. The owner occupied versus manager occupied, what other communities are moving or have that provision with the manager occupied properties versus owner occupied?
I know examples that my attorney brought up is Lancaster, and it's been very successful for them, and State College is 2 of them.
Okay. And could you provide us with, if you have copies of either their ordinances that allow that to occur, and Mr. Knight as well, if you guys could provide us with some of that information, that'd be appreciative to see how that's operating. You know, I don't know. To me, some of the way that it was phrased was a little concerning, how we're attempting to, I guess, future-proof you from potential, you know, if I want to sell, people may not be interested, may be interested in my property, but may not be interested in moving to the city of Harrisburg. And then also on the other piece about the non-residential owner, the non-residential manager occupied. So someone would be, for instance, could live outside the city but manage the property. Or no, that's no. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding this properly.
The manager would live at the property just like the owner, and take care of it just like the owner. So, and the employees would not live there. They would be residents, non-residents, I'm sorry, of the property.
Okay. And then, so the employee would be somebody that would be full-time all year round staying at the property?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Okay. Yeah, because I guess some of my concern initially was, I guess, you know, and trying to read through this a second time rather quickly about the potential for, you know, absentee or for someone to say, hey, you know, I'm managing the property, but I don't necessarily live there. And if you're not residents, your occupation isn't that high, you know, there's a potential for, you know, issues with that property there. Yeah.
To give you an idea too, that an innkeeper, it's pretty involved. So they work, 12 or more hours a day. And the nice thing is the residents there, so it makes it very convenient. If any problems come up, they're available right away on site. So that's how pretty much all B&Bs operate.
Okay, and then to, I guess the other question or concern I had was not necessarily with the applicant, but as we are looking to, amend our zoning code and move forward with this comprehensive plan, whether or not it would be, incumbent upon us to maybe try to address this one specific issue and then look to address the larger issue as we're looking at a comprehensive plan, or trying to tackle it all in this, to tackle several issues in this one, in this one bill here. But no further questions at this time. I guess I'll have to talk with some of my other council members and Mr. Knight after this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Majors. It seems from the discussion, I'm not sure what the council's pleasure would be if you'd like to move forward with Bill 12 on our next legislative session agenda, or if you'd like more time to digest the some of the information that was requested, the ordinances from both State College and Lancaster, and a firm number of residents that would be affected. So what is your pleasure in moving forward? Would you like to wait and further discuss this at a work session, or do you feel comfortable casting a vote during our next legislative session? President Williams?
Well, Chair Bowers, thank you, but I would rather us look at the other Lancaster and State College, and not only that, but I've asked Mr. Knight to separate the two and amend this, because we're talking about two different things. We're talking about having now having a manager instead of a owner resident living in there, and then also in this, he's also talking about the permit to have usage of a bed and breakfast in the commercial, general, and downtown center. So I would ask that he separate that and amend this. I'm sorry, and we amend this.
Mr. Knight, do you have any commentary or?
No, as I stated previously, if the city council members want to remove aspects of this and amend the legislation, the Planning Bureau is not in opposition to that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm a little confused because I thought the main thing with this amendment was the manager occupied property.
As I understand it, the main concern from council that they would like to separate out is the
No, but I mean, from the perspective of the applicant's main concern is manager occupied bed and breakfast.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
And what sounded to me like the council was concerned about the revision of the zoning code to permit it by right in the CG and DC districts. And if that aspect of the legislation is rescinded, again, the Planning Bureau does not oppose that.
And additionally, Councilwoman Bowers, I just want to make clear that the applicant is looking for a change in line 93. It calls for one non-resident employee, but the applicant is actually seeking 2 non-resident employees. I just want to make sure that that is clear to everyone, that they're also seeking that amendment.
Yes, so, thank you.
So for the applicant, it's 2 non-resident employees and manager occupied. The other amendments were this city city priority kind of thing.
That's correct.
Tiffany, I'm sorry, in 93, it just says, you said line 93?
Yes.
Well, you said only meals served for registered guests, cooking facilities for actual use by guests are prohibited.
Yes, President Williams, my apologies. On Friday, I had sent an updated Bill 12 to the city clerk because there was some of the lines got cut off.
Okay.
So the bill that is now posted online includes the accurate number line 93.
Okay.
So you may be just looking at a prior version.
Okay, here I have it updated. Okay. I see it. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Again, thank you for clarifying, Ms. Baldock. So given the conversation, I would actually like to table the bill at this time until we have an opportunity to review both Lancaster and State College ordinances that have been implemented and can hash out whether we're moving forward with an amendment or not. So I'd like to table it at this time for further review.
Thank you, Ms. Bowers. Ms. Bowers, could you, as the chair, please ask if there's any public comment?
Sure. Mr. Petroski, is there any public comment for Bill 12 of 2020?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bowers. Okay, Mr. Petroski, we're moving on. That's the conclusion of our hearing. We will now move on to any public comment. I want to thank Mr. Choi for his ability for recording all this. Council members at this time, is there any additional questions or comments you have before I move on to public comment? Before I close the hearing? Hearing none, Mr. Petroski, please let us know if there's any public comment.
There are no public comments related to the public hearing.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we will adjourn the public hearing and now move on to the Harrisburg City Council work session. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Harrisburg City Council work session. Today is Tuesday, October the 6th, 2020. Mr. Petroski, please do the roll call, please.
Mr. Allett.
Present.
Ms. Bowers.
Present.
Ms. Daniels.
Here.
Ms. Green.
Present.
Mr. Madsen.
Here.
Mr. Majors.
Here.
Ms. Williams.
Here, thank you.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Am I still supposed to be recording?
No, sir, I'm sorry. I said we would end the public hearing. And then
okay,
I'm sorry.
That's my fault.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Troy, we appreciate your services.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I now will turn the meeting over to Councilmember Green.
Thank you, President Williams. So tonight we're going to be discussing Bill 8 again. I know we've discussed it a few times over the past 6 months or so. We started this conversation before we went into our summer hiatus, and we've continued it as we've returned as well as over the summer. So we've had a lot of public interest and public comments regarding this legislation. So I will ask Kirk to read the Bill 8 just for everyone's refreshment. And then also if he could read the public comments that we have for tonight so that as we begin our discussion, we already have the public comments that have been submitted for tonight.
Sure. Bill 8 of 2020 is an ordinance amending Part 5 of the Administrative Code under Chapter 2-500, adding thereto Chapter 2-515 to establish a Citizens Law Enforcement Advisory Committee. And we have quite a few public comments in relation to Bill 8, so bear with me as I pull them up. All right, the first comment is from Winnie O'Kella, South 13th Street resident. To whom it may concern, I am writing regarding the Harrisburg Community Review Board. It is my strong desire that the final draft of the bill incorporate the feedback gathered through the town halls and public comments submitted to City Council. Moreover, I strongly support the version of Bill 8 amended by the HCRB work group that proposed a review board structure and encouraging accountability and oversight and access to the information, independent investigative and subpoena powers. Thank you for your service, Winnie O'Kella. Next comment submitted is by Christopher Evie. To whom it may concern, I am writing regarding the Harrisburg Community Review Board. It is my strong desire the final draft of this bill incorporate the feedback gathered from the town halls and the public comments, which is submitted by City Council, and I strongly support the version of Bill 8 amended and the amendments the HCRB work group proposed, which is the same comment that was submitted before by Winnie. The third comment is from Rachel Lee Faith Peacock. I live at 1700 block of Fulton. I'm once again writing regarding the Harrisburg Community Review Board. I've submitted a lot of public comments over the past few months, as well as my fellow Harrisburg residents. We the people strongly believed in the version of Bill 8 amended by the HCRB work group. Everyday Black and brown people are dying at the hands of police, and I want a community review board that is able to hold the police accountable for their actions the way I would be held accountable if I were to commit a crime. Like yourselves, I took an oath to protect and serve the people of this nation. I completed my contract with the United States Army, but I've continued my service in my community in different ways. Right now, I'm beseeching you to recognize the decisions that you make affect Black and brown people of the Harrisburg city. While my battle with the terrorism is over, your battle with the totalitarianism is not. I need a community review board that encourages accountability, oversight, unobstructed access to information. I also need the board to be able to conduct independent investigations and to have administrative subpoena powers. Thank you for your service, Rachel Lee Faith Peacock. Brand Bassam writes, I submit this comment in regards to the Harrisburg Community Review Board. For far too long, our police have been unaccountable. The citizenry they claim to serve and protect. The Community Review Board is the least the city can do to align the interest of the HPD with desires of the people of Harrisburg. It is imperative that the final draft of this bill incorporate the feedback gathered through the town halls and public comments submitted to City Council. I strongly support the version of HCRB work group that proposed the review board structure. Anything less would be a personal insult to those who believe the police should no longer be above the law, so that the violently enforced when it comes to us. The city does need get a PR mouthpiece for the Harrisburg Police Department. And what the original bill was, I hope that you will prioritize the community's needs and desires for a better Harrisburg, where we no longer need to fear or employ to ensure our public safety. The next comment is from Liam Hicklin. Thank you for the town halls you have conducted to get feedback from the community on Proposition 8 of 2020. Appreciate the fact that the number of council persons have vocalized support for amending the language in the bill so that it centers Harrisburg City residents rather than the police department, so that it strengthens the role of the board to be advocates for residents and to a body that is designed to hold police accountable for acts of racism, racialized violence, brutality, and excessive force. Though I still believe that the only way to check the power of the police department enjoys to defund demilitarized police departments, and though I believe that the only way to ensure the safety of the residents is to fund response teams made of social workers, mental health experts, and crisis intervention personnel, I acknowledge the formation of this board as an act of good faith between City Council and the residents it represents. However, I do not want Council to adopt a proposal that does not have its core functions for the purpose of checking police power. I I want to voice my strong support for work that Harrisburg Community Review Board work group has been doing for the past few months. Community outreach, informational work sessions, and coordinated community responses. The proposed amendments that the review board submitted have been drafted based on community input, and I would like to see a board adopted that has a structure that represents the residents of Harrisburg in its formation. Less strength given to the mayor and chief of police in selecting candidates, more power, input for the community in selecting candidates, unobstructed access to information necessary to make a determination, independent investigative powers, and the ability to recommend disciplinary action, administrative subpoena powers. Thank you in advance for your serious consideration of these issues as you move to finalize the bill and vote on it. Liam Hickman. Tracy Hogan's writes in regards to the Harrisburg Community Review Board. It is her strong desire that the final draft of this bill incorporate the feedback gathered through the comments submitted to City Council through the HCRB. The board structure encourages accountability and oversight, unobstructed access to information, and independent investigative and subpoena powers. Thank you for your service. Prioritization of the community's needs and desires for a happier and safer Harrisburg. Adrian Retzer actually submitted a comment on eviction cases. She says she's writing today as a highly concerned citizen of Harrisburg. While I understand that every aspect of life has turned upside down due to COVID-19, it is responsibility of our elected officials to represent their constituents by protecting their human rights. For Dauphin County officials to even consider eviction proceedings at this time is a direct violation of that responsibility. This council wants to be responsible for shoving its neighbors out onto the streets right before the winter in the area that has already nearly unaddressed homeless issues. There are resources for landlords during these uncertain times, but it seems like this council isn't willing to keep intact the basic needs of its neighbors that have become unemployed through no fault of their own. How can this council rightfully consider eviction when there is a national moratorium on evictions until the end of the year? I'm not sure how anyone could reasonably justify a horrific and selfish act. Thankfully, I've personally been able to support myself and my household during this pandemic, but not everyone is as fortunate. I urge you to realize that your decisions could make the less fortunate even more disadvantaged when you come into contact with them. How can you, as civil service, justify eviction at this time? How does council intend to keep the citizens of Dauphin County's basic human rights intact? I'm eager to see what your choices are, to see if your compassion will show up. This is from Joe Bitzer. I'm writing today. It was recently brought to my attention that there were 600 eviction cases filed in Dauphin County. 600 families may be kicked out of their houses and into the street. 600 families that are facing financial hardship, loss of income, not to mention possible health crisis due to this pandemic. I understand that landlords may not be able to survive without loss of rental income. Rather than kicking people to the curb, they should ask for government assistance. Kicking people onto the streets is the only way to make this pandemic worse, as shelter systems are already at capacity. This could be a very dangerous situation for the residents of Dauphin County. There is a national eviction moratorium placed on until December 31st, 2020. Ruling in favor of the landlord is a direct violation declared by the CDC. Our neighbors need compassion and kindness right now, not eviction. This is from Andrew Hollinger. After years of national and international outcry, the people have made it clear that we know the system is not meant to protect us and working for all people. Too many innocent Black men and women and trans people have died at the hands of police, and change must be made now. Holding our officers accountable is step one. We all have jobs and we do not adequately perform our duties, we are fired. When we kill someone, we face trial. Police officers are not often protected from these consequences. Of course, not every situation is straightforward, but that is why the people need representation in a Citizen Law Enforcement Advisory Committee. That will ensure the Harrisburg Bureau of Police be transparent, fair, and held accountable for their interactions with our citizens. I demand the board include a structure that encourages accountability and oversight, unobstructed access to information, and independent investigative and subpoena powers. I demand that all public feedback in the town halls be incorporated in the final draft, and I support the HCRA work group's amended bill. Thank you for your commitment in serving our community towards a peaceful future. Peter Fair writes, I'm in support of the Harrisburg Community Review Board. It is my strong desire that the final draft of this bill incorporate the feedback gathered through the town halls and comments submitted to City Council. And I strongly support the HCRB work group's amended Bill 8 as it proposes a review board structure encouraging accountability and oversight of unobstructed access to information and independent investigative and subpoena powers. Thank you for your service, Peter Fair. Alex Sheriffs writes, I am writing regarding Bill 8 and the formation of a police community review board. First of all, thank you for the opportunities that you have provided the community to provide feedback on this bill. I've submitted prior comments and attended live virtual town halls. I believe the strongest version of this bill will be the one that takes into account all the feedback that you have received. I strongly support the version of Bill 8 amended HCRB work group. And I am happy to see the work group made amendments to include the review board structure, encourages accountability and oversight, unobstructed access to information, and independent investigative and subpoena power. My feedback on the most current version of the Bill 8, that I would like to see the official name of the committee changed to Citizen Law Enforcement Advisory Committee, CLEAC, to the Citizens Law Enforcement Review Committee. I believe that the change would reflect the role that citizens would like to see this committee play. As someone who works in the field of public health, I understand how the safety of a community is so important to the well-being of its residents. Having a community review board to provide oversight will help ensure that the Harrisburg Police Department makes all residents feel safe and protected. I appreciate your service and the care that you have taken to prioritize the community's input in this important bill. Teresa Collins writes, I have not forgotten about Bill 8. I expect the final draft of Bill 8 to incorporate the feedback gathered through the town halls and from the public comments submitted to City Council, and support the version of Bill 8 amended to the HCRB work group that proposes a review board structure encouraging accountability, oversight, unobstructed access to information. Honestly, otherwise, what's the point? Comment submitted by Angela Curtin, who resides at the 1500 block of North 2nd Street. I'm writing to endorse the version of Bill 8 amended by the HCRB work group. To be plain, I don't believe the Community Law Enforcement Review Board, even with the subpoena powers, is sufficient to truly transform the inherently corrupt system as policing. However, it shows promise in promoting a greater sense of accountability with the police department, which has been long lacking. You surely know what everyone else who isn't living on the rock knows, that the police forces everyone inherently racist, brutal, therefore untrustworthy. So what does it say about the majority of Black and brown constituents if you push legislation that is written functionally, does nothing to improve upon its practices? I'm frankly tired of seeing elected officials playing nice with the cops and allowing them to continue their utter lack of transparency while Black and brown people continue to suffer. Backing Bill 8 as amended by HCRB is a step toward decreased authoritarianism of our police department, a step toward disenfranchised residents, a voice, a chance to heal, a chance to thrive, is also a step towards building trust and greater engagement between residents and elected officials, which can lead to improvements of many other areas of life here in Harrisburg. Amanda Arbor writes, she lives in Allison Hill. I'm writing to comment on Bill 8 of 2020. From the town halls and work sessions that have been held so far on this bill, it is clear that the Harrisburg residents want a community review board, not just a citizen advisory council. To ensure that the Harrisburg Police Bureau has some level of accountability and oversight to the communities it is supposed to protect and serve. As representatives of the people of Harrisburg, I believe it is imperative that any final bill passed by council incorporates the extensive community feedback gathered through the town halls and public comments submitted to date. Anything else would be blatantly ignoring the clearly expressed desire of your constituents. Young professionals of color and others in our community have put in significant time and effort and draft a version of the bill that would increase accountability and oversight of the Harrisburg Police Department and prioritize the safety of Black and brown people in Harrisburg. I strongly support the version of Bill 8 amended by the HCRB work group that proposes a review board, structure encouraging accountability and oversight, unrestricted access to information, and independent investigative and subpoena powers. This bill is for police brutality and white supremacy, but if amended would reflect the wishes of the community, it would at least be a step towards the Harrisburg Police Department being accountable to anyone but itself, and community members without a vested interest in the police have access to the information and power to do something about it. Danielle Sindelaire resides at 264 Delaware Street. I would like to once again send in a public comment for the version of Bill 8 that has been amended by the HCRB working group. We're tired of seeing neighbors brutalized and harassed without proper recourse, and it's time that our local PD is held accountable to the same degree that every other citizen of the city is. I'm thankful that council has taken the time to hear the public comments throughout this thoughts on this bill, and it's time to take action on the amendments. Kamika Campbell writes, I'm writing regarding the Harrisburg Community Review Board. We have been working in the community the last few months to make sure that our voices are heard regarding Bill 8. It's my strong desire that the final draft of this bill incorporate the feedback gathered through the town halls and public comments submitted to City Council. Moreover, I strongly support the bill amended by HCRB work group that proposed a review board structure encouraging accountability and oversight, unobstructed access to information, and independent investigative and subpoena powers. While I prefer overall to see our police department reorganized, downsized, and defunded so the city can make room for a more proactive public safety solution, I recognize the importance of this exercise and its potential to actually restore faith in police in the city. Thank you for your service and prioritization for the community's needs and desires for a happier and safer Harrisburg. Melissa Hunsberger writes, Harrisburg City Council, I'm writing regarding the Harrisburg Community Review Board. It is my strong desire that the final draft of this bill incorporate the feedback gathered through the town halls and public comments submitted by the City Council. Moreover, I strongly support the version of the amended bill by HCRB work group that proposed a review board structure encouraging accountability and oversight, unobstructed access to information, and independent investigative powers. Thank you for your service and prioritization of the community's needs and desires for a happier and safer Harrisburg. And that is all for the comments.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Petroski. I now turn it back over to Ms. Green.
Thank you, President Williams, and thank you, Mr. Petroski, for reading all those into record for us. So I know last time that we had a discussion on Bill 8, I proposed some amendments, and some council members had some amendments that they would like to see as well. I know some said they would send them in writing. I haven't received any in writing, but I know that the amendments were made, suggested verbally. In order to continue to move this legislation forward and ensure that we're repeating the same discussions without making progress, I would propose that tonight we amend the rule so that we're able to actually vote on some of those amendments so that they will become a part of the legislation and we can put them on record. Now, I know there is a process that has to be gone through in order for us to be able to do that. But before I begin that process, I wanted to just kind of get the opinion of my council members if they would like to vote on some of those amendments tonight so that when we move forward, they're part of this legislation instead of us rehashing the conversation over and over again if we're agreeable to those amendments.
Excuse me, Chair Green. We cannot vote on anything. This is a work session tonight. We have to vote at a legislative session.
So I have had a conversation with our solicitor and he said that there is a procedure that can be gone through to amend the rules of the work session.
Okay, we can amend,
to vote on the amendments. The reason why I kind of just made this suggestion is because, you know, we've had these conversations a couple of times and I know last time a lot of people were agreeable to the amendments that were proposed. And I think that it would show progress to the public and also help us to move forward to legislation so that as people continue to look at the legislation that's available, they're not looking at something with, you know, 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 proposed amendments that they can't see. I think it's important for them to be able to see what will be being voted on or what proposed to be voted on at the legislative session. So if we're in agreement to that, then we can start the process. If not, we can continue the discussion and make amendments at the legislative session as well.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Green. Mr. Grover.
Yes, Madam President.
Could you give me a verification of how we can vote on at a work session? What statute is that under?
So certainly, the council has at all times the power to create and amend its own rules of council. And it says so within your rules of council.
Right.
It also adopts the Sturgis Standard Code of Parliamentary Procedure as the general rules instead of Robert's Rules of Procedure. So there's a couple steps that would have to happen. There would have to be a motion to suspend the rules to discuss this. There'd have to be a motion to go back into session. There would have to be a motion to temporarily amend rule, and I figured this out sitting here tonight based on some text messages, 2B of the council rules, the last sentence of which says that no formal action would be taken at a work session. The temporary amendment would allow for consideration of this bill that action to amend could be taken. That would require a 2/3 vote of the council to agree, or it couldn't move forward. And what you'd be doing, be temporarily amending rule 2B of the council rules in accordance with the provisions of rule 6 of the council rules for amendments. And so, but 2/3 of the council would have to agree that they would amend them for tonight. They could amend it forever if they wish, but I wouldn't recommend that. And then part of that would be then requiring that minutes be taken from there on after the meeting for the rest of the meeting, so that minutes are available for public review.
And what article did you say that was in under the third class city? Oh.
No, it's under City Council's rules, which is currently Resolution 30 of 2018.
Okay, hold on. I'm looking. Okay.
And so under Resolution 30, there's a section, rule number 2 has sections A and B. Section B ends with no formal action shall be taken at a work session. But then if you go to rule 6, it says proposed amendments to these rules must be presented in and shall be adopted only by the affirmative vote of 2/3 of all members of council. So, so that is a motion that can be made. And if it carries, you can temporarily amend the rules, including the rule that says no formal action shall be taken. But doing so would then require that minutes be taken after that rule is adopted for the remainder of the night.
Neil, for my clarification, so when the rules are changed, then as we're discussing the amendments, do we then have to suspend rules to discuss the amendments, or do we
Because it wasn't an agenda item tonight. So,
okay.
So there wasn't an agenda item to discuss council amendment to rule resolution 30 of 2018. There should be, technically this should be a suspension of the rules, but it's really, I guess, a point of clarification by council. But that discussion, because it's not on the agenda, it's to have this discussion. That's why you suspend the rules.
But then what I'm saying is like, so when someone makes a motion to amend, to make an amendment, whichever it is, then can we talk about it, or do we have to suspend the rules again?
No, you can talk about it because you've added to the agenda a consideration of amending the rules. So the motion, you make a motion to suspend, you discuss why, which technically we're doing right now, and then you make a motion to go back in. You make a motion then to, when you go back in, you're going back in to amend the agenda to add a discussion for temporarily changing the council rules for the evening.
Oh, so it's not like we're voting on the amendment, we're voting.
Right, right. And then if you vote by 2/3 to do so, then you can move on to voting on amendments. If there's not a 2/3 vote, which is 5 members, then it can't be voted on tonight.
And if this is too confusing, we can just do it at the legislative session. You know, we can discuss the proposed amendments again, or if anyone else has anything else to discuss, then I will move for it to be put on the next legislative session, and we can just vote on all amendments then. If we would vote to make changes tonight, you know, like make amendments tonight, I would then ask that it would be put on not the next legislative session, but the legislative session of October 27th. That way it would give the public and council plenty of time to look at the amended version before it will come up for vote.
I don't know if this is possible, and I apologize for kind of jumping into it. I don't know that I'm comfortable voting on amendments tonight, only because is there a way for us to actually see the amendments as kind of a standalone? I was just going through the document, and I'd be kind of curious to say, how are we structuring each of the amendments? Are we doing it as kind of a, and I guess I go back to the budget. When we pass on the budget, we often have a lot of standalone amendments that go on it. Is that how we're treating this right now, kind of a standalone amendments? Because when I was looking at the document as we're going through, I see that things have been added to it in green and other colors as well.
Right.
Neil, what did you say? I'm sorry.
You haven't gotten that far in the discussion.
Okay. So if I might suggest, at least from my, you know, my vantage point, or at least for me to be able to conceptualize all of this, if we could get like a list of amendments that we are considering as kind of amendment 1 that we're proposing is this, amendment 2 is this, and you know, and subsequent, and be able to review what those amendments are, because I'd like to look at them kind of not just in the totality of the entire piece of legislation, but as an individual amendment, what they're doing to substantially change or add or detract from how it was written. And that might just be me kind of feeling that way, but that'd be what I would recommend doing. Not that I wouldn't want to say, let's go vote up and down. I just don't know that I'm ready to look at all of that without seeing it as kind of like a standalone concept to understand exactly what it is that we're voting on. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So and Councilman, you would have, if 2/3 voted to consider amendments, you would then have the decision to make collectively. Do you do them one at a time? Do you do them one section at a time? Do you do the whole thing? I mean, so those are your procedural decisions to make on a bill that's complicated like this.
Correct.
And I've not heard a preference from anybody that how they would like to do it. I didn't think it would be all at once. I really did think it would be a discussion of each proposed amendment and go from there. But that's up to, I think, Councilman Green and the council to decide how they want to approach it.
I mean, I'll stand. I mean, listen, I'm 1 of 7 on this, you know, body, obviously, but that's just my perspective on that from like at least from an amendment standpoint.
Yeah. So thanks, man. I completely understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, Committee Green. How do you want to move forward with this? This is your chair. You're the chair.
I do understand. I was just trying to get the, you know, a brief opinion before I made any suggestion to amend rules, because if it looks like people aren't in agreement to that, then it would kind of be not the best use of time when we could be discussing the bill or potential amendments or figuring out how we're going to move forward with it.
Yeah. Hey, Chair Green, just a thought. You know, I understanding where a few of the council members are. You know, I understand, you know, having worked in the legislative process, you know, with the General Assembly, you know, amendments in committee or a work session per se are common, but since that's not common to how we normally do our business, what would be, you know, and me, I think you're right. I think there's been a lot of hard work done by, you know, yourself, Chair, members of the community have provided a lot of input, and it can be, I guess, frustrating for the community to hear all the comments, you know, understand that we have some, you know, a lot of amendments out there floating, but the version that they'll constantly see is the one that was as proposed. So, you know, I'm, you know, one council member, but I'm not opposed to, you know, offering some amendments in committee. But I think another way, you know, if changing the rules of how we do our normal business is something that is of concern to some members, you know, if at our next legislative session we made amendments, I mean, that would still be, we wouldn't necessarily have to make amendments and then vote on it right away. We could adopt amendments, have another work session with those amendments, and then again, there are still some additional amendments that I'm considering. I sent Chair Green some documents just a little while ago with some of the amendments that I'm considering. But I definitely, since this is her bill, her chair, I wanted to make sure that her amendments were incorporated, since they contemplate a lot of the same things that I do. But I think some of her, you know, legislative language and all the work that she's done, you know, I definitely want to see what we adopt first before offering some of the additional amendments. You know, I'm one council member, but I'm in support of, you know, making this work session an opportunity for us to make those changes. I think we could clearly spell out, since they are in specific sections, we could have each, you know, look at each section as an amendment. You know, I'm just looking at one about composition. We could offer that as an amendment, see how members feel about it, vote on it, and then be able to present it, you know, present a updated version for the public to review. And then even if we have to come back for additional comments, we could do that as well. So my preference is to, you know, really start getting into some of this work now, you know, sooner than later, because of all the hard work that Chair Green and others have done on this. So those are my thoughts.
Okay. Chair Green, how do you want to proceed with this? I will leave it to your decision.
I believe Councilman Bowers was saying something.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay, thank you. So I just wanted the record to reflect that I did send my revisions on prior to our legislative session on September 22nd. I incorporated them in the Word document that was sent, and I also provided a brief synopsis in the email body. But if that wasn't received by Chair Green and all members on council, I'm happy to forward them again. And then another suggestion that I had, I think it sort of aligns with what Vice President Allett was saying, mainly for the residents' benefit in digesting the amendments. Perhaps we could compile just a list of the amendments and a brief, like, one sentence synopsis of what they do. That way, they could have access to the entire document and reading the entire document, but it would be much easier to have the reference list, just a quick blurb of what the amendment does. That way they know what they're reading once they view the entire bill.
Okay.
All right. Any other comments before?
I think that's an excellent idea from Councilman Bowers. And also, if you could resend that email, I did not get that email. It's just going back and reviewing Danielle.
Sure, no problem.
Danielle, this is President Williams. Neither did I. I didn't receive that as well. Could you send that to me again?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so listening to my fellow council members, I think it might be the best idea to kind of follow the structure that Councilman Majors laid out, which would be to put this on the next legislative agenda where we can make amendments and vote on amendments there. That way it follows our normal procedures. Tonight we can discuss any amendments that maybe weren't discussed or anything else we might want to clarify or information we might need beforehand. And then we will place it on the next work session, likely after the legislative session. So in other words, place it on next week's agenda, which will be Tuesday, October 13th on the legislative agenda. There we can vote on any amendments that we currently are considering. And then it will be placed on the next work session, which will be October 20th. If there are any other discussions that need to be made, public comments that the community would like to make, we can get that feedback and have that discussion on October 20th at the next work session. And then it will potentially be placed on the agenda for a vote on October 27th, depending on how the comments come back and what other work it might need to be done beforehand. So tonight we'll just continue with a regular work session. If there are any other amendments that anyone would like to discuss or any clarification, anything, I do have one other amendment that I would like to propose. So I'll open it up to my fellow council members first to see if it's anything they'd like to propose, and then I'll make the proposal for an amendment that I was thinking about. Go ahead, Dave.
Ms. Green, I just have a question to Mr. Grover. Mr. Grover, I wanted to ask you about a section of the amendment where it's inclusive where a member on the board would be able to ride in the police patrol car. Does our insurance cover that?
It should cover that, Madam President. There are ride-alongs not infrequently.
That person not being a city employee, that our coverage would.
You might note that others ride in police cars on a regular basis for when they're in the back seat. Okay. So it does come up what happens to the occupants of a police vehicle.
Can you just check that out for me, please? I just have been skeptical about that. So can you just check it?
I will note we're self-insured, if you recall.
I know we're self-insured.
So it's us paying if there's an accident.
I know, but
it's not an insurance policy.
Okay. Okay.
Dave, I believe you had something.
Yeah, now that we're sort of entering to the final stages of the resolution or bill, would it make sense in compliance with sunshine laws to form perhaps a work group of 3 council members who can kind of maybe meet just to look at legislation, look at input from the community, take in all the amendments from council members, and then help draft it? I think a lot falls on Chair Green's shoulders. I'm assuming she's been doing a lot of while we've all been putting input and amendments and stuff like that. I think maybe in these final stretches, it may be helpful just to have another pair of eyes looking at it as well. Just a suggestion for the group.
I will be open to that. I will give a lot of credit to Neil, who's been very, very instrumental in crafting the language and getting this put together. But I'm always open to discussing this with council members. So if we want to form a work group, or if we just want to informally form a work group, however we'd like to do it, I'm always open to that.
Okay, I'd be happy to serve on the work group.
So yeah, I'll get in contact with you. I'll reach out to anyone to see if they want to have any informal discussions about it, whether in pairs or individually.
Thank you.
So I do have one more amendment that I would like to suggest that we can discuss tonight. It's something that I believe I discussed with everyone kind of a little more loosely when I first suggested amendments when we were speaking individually. So this would speak more to the compliance piece to ensure that requests for information is complied with. The amendment would read essentially as such. There might be some language issues, but it would be a compliance piece inserted and would say, requests for information from the Harrisburg Police Department will be made in writing to the mayor and police department. Information should be provided to the CLEAC within 14 business days of the request. If more time is needed to respond, A response will be submitted to the commission within 7 business days of receiving the request. If the information requested is not provided or deemed not satisfactory, a recommendation will be sent to City Council and the mayor to freeze funding for hiring new officers. City Council will evaluate the request for information and any information provided to the commission by the Harrisburg Police Department. Council will then vote to either accept or deny the recommendation of freezing hiring made by the commission. If the recommendation is accepted, the Harrisburg Police Department will have 5 days to provide the requested information to council to avoid the suspension of funds. So, any thoughts, comments? Obviously, I can provide that to everyone in writing. It was just kind of the thought behind it was to ensure that when the request is made, that the information is actually provided and kind of provide a little bit of a backbone to if the information is not provided. I know that in the past, we've made requests and sometimes they aren't complied with in the time that we'd expect, or will pass legislation saying reports need to be done. We don't receive the reports. And we kind of always struggle with, well, how do we balance that, right? How do we ensure that we're getting the information that we're requesting? And so this kind of builds in a little bit of a leverage or an ability to ensure compliance that the city council can control. So third class city code says that the mayor is over top of the police department, but as we know, council is over top of funds. So this is something that we would be able to put in place. I know in discussions with Neil, this has been used in the past for different things. I believe it's more older legislation that it's been used for. But I thought that this might be a way to ensure compliance. Hopefully we would never get to this part, but it also doesn't just give the board complete power. It brings it back to council. Therefore, we would evaluate it and vote on it, because I know in discussions with some council members, we wanted to make for sure that that council still had some power over the process as well. So, thoughts, comments?
Chair Green, just a quick, I guess, comment or question. So that would be for future funding, or would that be our ability to, say they have a quarterly meeting and say in June they make a request and they don't receive information? Are we talking about freezing funding moving forward via a potential, I guess we'd have to vote on something like that, or are we talking about future funding of new officers moving forward?
So it would take place immediately after the 5-day period if the information isn't received. So if the information isn't received, it would stop the hiring of police immediately after the 5-day period, okay. Pushing it forward to like the next year, because in that case, it's not as effective if it will be going into the next funding year. So right. It would be an immediate trigger.
So for a new hire, so it wouldn't stop their funding that would have been appropriated annually, but if they were looking to bring on a new officer.
Right.
Okay.
Correct. So essentially it's a hiring freeze. It wouldn't affect officers that are already employed in the sense that it wouldn't stop the pay of any officers. It wouldn't stop allocations that have been approved for like equipment that might be necessary. So it shouldn't affect the day, like the immediate day-to-day, but it does affect the management component and how the police department runs. Therefore, it should get the attention of the police department leadership and encourage compliance.
Okay, thank you.
Any other thoughts, comments, concerns? All right, so I'll put that in writing and I'll submit that with the other amendments that I've recommended, which will look to be voted on at the next legislative session. If anyone else has anything else they would like to comment on tonight, please feel free. If not, then we'll look to turn the meeting back over.
As a housekeeping matter, Madam Chair, it would be helpful for the Law Bureau to be able to actually get the language worked into the document. And we maybe identify things that bang into each other, so to speak. We're eliminating or changing a word affects another piece of the ordinance. So that would be helpful if that could occur.
So you're asking that if anyone has any amendments, they get them to you in writing?
Or they get them to you and you get to them in, right? However it is. But so you don't want competing definitions for the same thing at the end of the day, or you don't want vague terms that dilute what you're trying to do.
All right. So I will get this, I'll text it to you, Neil, but I'll type it up to you and email it to you as well as the rest of the council members. And then I would ask that if anyone, this will be the end of my suggested amendments. So if anyone has any other amendments that they would like to see, if they could put them in writing and get them to Neil by, when would you like them by, Neil?
If you want to vote on them on Tuesday, it would be good to have them, you know, start a business Monday would be great, but you know, end of business, I guess Monday is still workable.
All right, so we'll shoot for Friday. If we could get them to Neil by Friday, that way him and his team aren't rushed to try to get them incorporated.
Okay. Have I guess I'll have a few suggestions, but I'll just offer this first one first, and then if there's other members that have comments or want to have a discussion, be great. One of the
excuse me, Mr. Majors, we can hardly hear you.
All right, sorry. So one of the amendments that I'd be looking at is to amend, I guess it'd be section 2-515.11 regarding meetings. The way that it's currently drafted in the version that I pulled, the draft for committee review has annual meetings and then such other committee meetings as the members deem necessary in public meeting rooms or facilities. I'd want to see that as quarterly meetings, if possible, so that we get, while we would leave it up to the committee to determine the committee or board to determine their meeting schedule, if we at least mandate once a quarter, I think that's something I would like to see happen, so that the public at least knows that this organization would be meeting on a regular basis outside of an annual meeting, so that, and then we can sunshine a meeting schedule similar to how we do for the Planning Commission and other committees that do meet, and then if they have other meetings as they deem necessary, they could make those changes as well. So that's just one of several other amendments that I'm going to propose, but I guess I'll stop there, and if there's any other comments on that one.
No real comments. I think it's a great idea. I think quarterly meetings wouldn't be too cumbersome, and it still allows them to be able to meet more frequently if chosen. Any other comments or amendments from anyone that they'd like to discuss tonight?
I guess I'll go again then. I think, hold on, let me make sure I get the right section. Well, I'm gonna offer some, not right now, but I'll put them in writing to you, Chair Green, some language around the intent and purposes. So that's section 2-515.3, just to ensure that we're accurately capturing what we want the committee to do. I know, I believe we, based on a lot of the feedback we received, I think it's important that if we're going to discuss our intent and purpose, that we make it a little bit more inclusive of some of the comments that we received during the public process, which was not just to, which as the language currently reads, to improve the community relationships with law enforcement. I think we can make some language changes around there to accurately reflect some of the concerns that we've heard.
Agreed. Any others?
Yes, Ms. Green, on 2-515.6, what process will we follow to appoint these 4 members from City Council?
Could you elaborate a little more?
What process will we follow? Would they be advised to send their applications in or their resume in, or how will you appoint these people? How you would select these people and appoint them?
So I know at our last discussion on Bill 8, there was a suggestion by Councilwoman Bowers to reach out to our community groups to help compile a list of people that they would recommend be a part of this community law enforcement advisory commission. And through that, we would use the same process of interviewing them and then voting. Obviously, it depends on how many people we get on the list. If we get a list of 20 people, we'll have to narrow it down. Maybe obviously basing it off of the qualifications that we've set out in the legislation, as well as recommendations from the community members and interviews. So.
I would like to see it open to every individual in the city of Harrisburg, not just limited to the organizations.
It's not. So, well, my amendment is to section 2-515.6, the original committee appointments. And I suggested adding a subsection C1, which would request assistance from the neighborhood groups to offer recommendations for their representative among the 7 policing districts within the city. At the last meeting when we discussed this, we recognized that there is some overlap between some of the neighborhood groups and their policing districts. So we noted that they would have to work together to determine who their representative would be. But I wanted to offer that amendment to give the people an opportunity. Like I said at the last meeting, we could all name probably 10 people who are policing our neighborhoods for no real gain or anything. It's simply for their protection, their family's protection, and their love and concern for their neighbors. So I think these neighborhood groups could be useful, and I think it would serve another purpose too, to sort of reestablish a working relationship between council and the neighborhood groups. I know that we received an updated list, I think it was in February, of the neighborhood groups that are active throughout the city. And I think we could utilize their assistance in filling some of the vacancies on other boards and commissions as well.
Okay.
Right, and maybe it should be noted, I believe the intent is not to be exclusive of any not in that list.
Okay.
So if anyone like recommend themselves or recommend someone specifically,
right,
they're welcome to make that recommendation. This list is to help start the process, to craft a list, of, a working list that we can begin to work from. If someone would like to recommend themselves or someone else, they would be able to contact the clerk and make that recommendation, send their resume, and they would go through the same process as anyone from the list. I think that's important to note, just so that no one feels like it's now like an exclusive club that you have to be affiliated or known by these the community groups. And I don't think that was ever the intent of it.
No, that was not the intent. It was simply a starting place.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions, thoughts? All right, if none, I will turn the meeting back over to President Williams. I will recommend that this legislation be moved to the next legislative agenda, which would be Tuesday, October 13th. There we will be able to vote on any amendments that we see fit. And then I will ask for it to be put on the following work session so that we can discuss, continue to discuss the legislation as amended.
Thank you, Ms. Green.
Thank you.
Mr. Petroski, is there any additional public comments?
No.
Okay. Hearing none, work session for Harrisburg City Council is now adjourned. Thank you, council members. Have a good evening.
Good night, everybody.
Night.
Good night.